Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a Virginia-born and Nashville-based singer-songwriter. Only a few songs in, she's just kicking off and making a name for herself in the pop world. Welcome, Kyra.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here. I always like to start with where your music journey kind of all began.
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from Virginia, and I have been writing ever since I could remember. Like my parents have home videos of me probably at like 4 or 5 years old singing about corn chips. And now my songs are a lot more advanced, but I took my journey, like kept writing. I started taking guitar lessons and did showcases through that. And I also did choir through elementary, middle, and high school, which gave me performance opportunities as well. And just the teachers that I had along the way, like, really pushed me to get out of my comfort zone. And of course, like, I would share my original songs with them, and they'd be like, "You need to sing this. Like, there's a showcase coming up. You better sing this. You better perform." So definitely like having that push to be like, "Okay, like you can do this. Like you can sing your original music. This is good music." Like really pushed me to pursue it. And I studied songwriting in college as well. So just really taking that journey and like cultivating my craft and just learning how I could be the best songwriter that I could be.
So, um, as you started writing those songs, whether they were random things of like a very young age or like, as you said, more advanced now, at what point along all of that where you're like, okay, like maybe it was when, you were told that they were like good and then pushed to do all the things, but when was it that you kind of decided, okay, like this is something I want to pursue as like an artist and do the writing thing and do just like the whole package deal that comes with being an artist? Like when was that sort of shift or commitment?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. So my dad and I ended up going to a FAFSA meeting while I was in high school. And before we'd gone to that FAFSA meeting, I was like, okay, like I think I'll do maybe like audio production in college or just something, I guess, more substantial than songwriting. Because of course, like I'm from an area where like songwriting is not a huge thing. And like very few people perform, very few people actually write songs. And so like I didn't know about that whole side of the industry until I went to the FAFSA meeting and we found out that there's something called the Academic Common Market. And through that, I could get in state tuition by going to a school that offers songwriting. And so my dad looked into it and found a school, Middle Tennessee State University, and showed me. He was like, they actually have a songwriting major. And of course, like I looked into places like Berkeley and like there's some places in California as well, but those are private schools that cost a lot of money. And of course, my parents they wanted me to go to college to achieve my dreams, but still balling on a budget. Like, so I wasn't deep in debt now, I guess, which I'm very thankful for. But so found out about the songwriting major and everything. And then from there, I took a trip with my dad. I think we went to the FAFSA meeting in like September, and we ended up flying to MTSU in October, touring the school, and then I was admitted like a month later. So it was a very, very quick process, but it was kind of like I grew up like loving songwriting, loving being able to like express my feelings that way. And then when I found out, like, oh, like people have careers in this, like you can actually do this as a job. And I'm like, I don't want to do anything else. Like, okay, yes, I wanted to like try to do the audio part for like just, I guess, a career, but that's before I knew about any of the songwriting stuff. And so from there, it was more of like a hands down, like, okay, I'm going to school for songwriting and I am doing songwriting. Like, that's like end of story kind of thing.
So I totally get that because like the audio thing is it's like that's kind of like that bridge where it's like you could still be involved in those things that you're like so passionate about or like enable yourself to like make those songs like come to life and all that. But it's like, the more reliable option, the more like actual like life, job, whatever, career kind of option. Um, so with pursuing songwriting, at what point, because songwriting, it can be for other people. You don't have to be the face of your own songs. How did your artist project kind of develop pursuing that and, taking songwriting seriously? Like, what point was it, okay, I like what I've got. Let's record it. Let's put it out. Let's do the, you know, performative side of the songwriting and all that.
Yeah, so, in high school, I really wanted to record my songs, and I really wanted to, like, get stuff out there, and so, through I think it was, like, a connection that my mom had, we were able to, like, find a guy and record one of my songs, and that is only solely on SoundCloud, and I will not release that song anywhere else, but it was, like, a good jumping off point where, like, I recorded it, I kinda got to learn the ins and outs of, like, okay, this is how you record a song, and I had also created the track for that as well because I was big into, like, using GarageBand and using Logic at the time. Like, I still occasionally use those applications, but I'm more focused on the songwriting aspect of it now, but recorded that SoundCloud song. I think that was my junior year of high school, and I kinda wanted to, like, keep the ball rolling as I went into college, but I am very picky about my sound because it's one of those things where, like, I really value my work, and if it's not projected the way that I wanna project myself, then I won't release it. Just because it's, like, it's gonna be out there for a while, like, of course, I can take it down, but it's, like, a reflection of who I am because it's my story, it's, like, I wrote the song and everything, and so I worked with, like, a few audio production majors who were at MTSU, and, like, unfortunately, our genres didn't quite, like, mesh well together. Like, I worked with a few people who were more, like, R&B rather than pop, and so it was kind of like, "Okay, you get, like, pop R&B," but it was like, I'm a bit more pop, and so just kind of taking the time to, like, really find a person whose views matched my own, and when did I so October of 2022, um, I met with his name is Daniel Dennis, he's a producer out of East Nashville, who I also met through a connection of my mom's, who my mom is not in music at all, she works for the government, but so, like, no music there whatsoever, but somehow she had this friend who knew the producer out of out of East Nashville, and I met with him, and I brought him one of my songs, which ended up being my first release song, "Till Home," and, like, I brought him my guitar, and I played it for him, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, like, I can do something with this." And I, like, listened to a lot of the stuff that he'd produced, and he had, like, a variety of, like, country and some pop, but, like, he'd been doing it for such a long time where it was, like, it was easy for him to just kind of, like, switch it up, kinda thing. So we recorded "Till Home," and I released it I think I recorded it in September of 2022 and released it in November. Um, and then, like, had a little release party and everything for it, and all my friends came, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we're actually doing this thing!" And so it was, like, very refreshing to, like, after looking for somebody who, like, matched my vision for so long and, like, meeting that person and being able to record my music, and, like, after that, I recorded 2 more songs with Daniel, and then I'm going back in April/May to finish the rest of my EP. So, like, finding that person that you really connect with, especially like, "Okay, here's my song, like, how can we make it a hit?" kinda thing. Um, and, like, he makes all the tracks and stuff. I pretty much just bring the song, and he's like, "Alright, I'll make the track, I'll mix it, I'll master it," and he's he does his stuff. It's amazing. But yeah, so it took some work, but, like, I'm really happy with where I'm at now because I put in the work to be picky and find that person who like I could stick with and who really matched my views of like, okay, this is what I want for my project.
Yeah, and I think a big part of like developing any sort of foundation or momentum or anything as an artist through the music specifically is like having some sort of consistency. So like working with a variety of different people is going to get you a variety of different outcomes, and then that might not all mesh very well with one another. And finding someone you can consistently work with is it can be a true like game changer, especially if you're someone that outsources a lot of those sorts of aspects and doesn't do the production thing, because not all artists do. But having someone that you can actually like be like, okay, like I know that I'm gonna get something that A is good and B like matches and kind of fits what I'm going for. And if it doesn't the first time, we can fix it up in a way that it will. That's huge. Like that's a big thing to have on your side for sure. Um, with the songwriting, what do you find most often inspires a lot of your songwriting?
I would say a lot of personal experiences, whether it be like, oh, like I was in a bad relationship, or like, oh, I'm having friendship issues. Like, it's just, I feel like, at least for me, it's so easy to draw from personal experiences because, like, oh, my little cat wants to say hi, Sunny. But just drawing from personal experiences and like I'll be in the car like listening to like somebody else's song and I'll be like, "Oh, I like that idea, but I could go like a different direction with it." Or like I get a lot of ideas as like I'm falling asleep and I'll grab my phone and I'll write it down because I'm like, I would hate to forget this when I woke up in the morning because I feel like this could be a good idea. And so, like, of course, I do have the occasional experiences or like the co-writes where I go in and somebody's like, here's this idea, like, do you want to write on it? And of course, like taking that, listening to their experiences, but also being able to bring in some of your own experiences as well. Just because I feel like when you write a song, you're not only writing about your own feelings, but also wanting to have others connect with it as well. Um, and I think that's the great thing about writing about experiences because it's like, okay, yes, I went through this horrible thing, but I'm sure there's somebody else who's going through it as well who will be able to connect with it on a level that maybe I'm not even connecting with my song.
Yeah, I mean that is, you know, that's a big thing, and it's always interesting bringing different experiences together in something like that, like providing different perspectives, because like you could have an idea and approach, that's definitely 100% something that you could complete in your own, you know, just 100% you. But if you bring somebody else into that, it's like the song will take a completely different form, and that can be a really cool sort of outcome. It's like with the co-write thing, that's the benefit of that is like two heads is better than one, right? Like
Yeah,
it just
yes,
adds it just
exactly.
adds another perspective, and it's always interesting how those things can kind of come together. But yes, take the last minute notes before you fall asleep, because those ideas can be some of the best ones. You never know. So, um if you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would you call
Oh gosh. If I could get a
it?
new, let's see, I would consider myself very pop, but like
Mhm.
not mainstream pop. I feel like the pop 10 years ago is very different from the pop now. Um, so probably creating creating a word based off of pop so people would still look at it and be like, I know what direction she's going in, but like kind of like how there's soft pop or there's like
Mhm.
alternative pop. I I guess like if I were to come up with something, it would be like I I have no idea. I like something with pop in it though. Like I don't even know because I'm not like soft pop. I'm not. I would like maybe like alt pop, but maybe like spinning it. I don't know. I don't know.
There's no wrong answer, you know,
Yeah,
like
I'm like,
however, like I guess the question then would be if it's branching off of pop, it's like what is it that you're doing or what is it that you're writing that you think is different than what would be considered just straight up pop? You know, like what further classification do we need to really paint the full picture?
I would say compared to other pop, I feel like I tell a lot more stories. Like more my stories are more in depth. So maybe like storytelling pop or like I guess maybe like experiential pop. Like I feel like that
Okay.
could be cool. That could be cool just like based off of like it's more like you're gonna get a full story out of this. You're gonna have like or you could have like different categories like oh friendship experiential pop like guy experiential pop kind of thing like it's more like yes you're experiencing different stories but it's also like you're you're taking in learning experiences from these songs. I feel like that could be so cool.
So you're taking pop and you're creating a branch that is ultimately just going to have more branches growing out of it, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, it's gonna be like a huge tree of growth.
Oh no. That tree's gonna end up being a little lopsided that way. That branch is gonna be
Yeah.
carrying all the weight.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. But I think it'd be so cool. Like if you could go into like Spotify and like click on like experiential pop and be like, okay, what am I feeling today? Like what am I going through? Like kind of like what's the vibe? And just being able to like choose a category. Like I know you can do that in Spotify in general, and being like, oh, I'm feeling more like bedroom pop today, or like, oh, I'm cleaning my kitchen and I want a cleaning playlist. But
Yeah.
like more so like I feel like it's you'll get playlists that people have made where it's like, oh my gosh, like my me and my best friend are going through something. We just had like this big like friendship breakup. And like there are playlists for that, but being able to like find songs that actually talk about that
Mm.
is like a bit more difficult, especially like I went through a thing with like a little thing with some friends. And like at the time, I was like, I don't have any songs that I can listen to where I'm like, I'm going through the same thing. Like I didn't have anything like that. And finally, I found one song where I was like, this is my song. This is what I feel. But it was only one song. So if I could have something else where it was like, here's like 10 songs that like talk about how you feel, then I think it would just maybe like help me process situations differently or like I mean even like as a writer like if other writers did that and I heard a song like that like I would draw inspiration from that too.
So even that's interesting because usually like when we think genre, we don't necessarily you know it's the sonic perspective first. It's the sound first and then any sort of like context. Like yes, you would write a song differently for something like country than you would for pop, than you would for rock and so forth. But it's always like our minds instantly like we hear it first rather than like looking specifically at the words. But you're almost like classifying this further category of pop less, you know, it's we've checked off the box, you know, we know we're listening to pop, but it's the classification comes from the context rather than the actual like sound. So it's not even necessarily a different flavor as much as it is the context and the content within the music itself.
Yes. Yeah, and like I've even been told before that like I listen to the words more than I do the music kind of
Hmm.
thing. Like if I'm listening to a song and I don't connect with the lyrics, I'll turn it off. But I think that's mostly because I write so much. Like I am a very lyric driven person where like most of the time I'll write my lyrics first versus coming up with the melody or anything like that. And so I think like that's more of like a me thing where I get drawn to the words and the stories versus like, oh, okay, this is like a groovy song. Like I don't get me wrong, I love myself a groovy song, but I like when it has a lot of meaning behind it versus just like, okay, these are like they're just throwing words at you with a cool little melody, like mixed in with it.
Hmm. No, you know, that does I've never thought about it in the way of like if the lyrics aren't like doing anything for me, it's gone. I've never got like I would not consider myself that much of a lyric person, but that's interesting. That's what's going to end up being like your favorite stuff a lot of the time. It's like, yes, there are the stuff that sounds good, but then there's also that stuff that just like pulls at the right heartstrings, and just like
Yes.
it says the right things. But that's interesting. Yeah, I think that does give more context to the experiential pop classifications. But you're right. I think that like, if we categorized things on like by stories within different genres and stuff like that, like the context, like you said, that could be really cool.
Yeah, and it's like not something I've ever seen before either. So I feel like it would just, I mean, shoot, I might want to patent this idea in case Spotify ever wants to steal this. But like I think it would really draw people in a bit more just to like, I guess, listening to music that they might not have listened to
Hmm.
originally, but like being like, okay, well, this is about an experience that I can relate to. Like, let me see how I feel about it.
Hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. Because like sometimes you are just looking for something that says the right things. That might not be always the go-to. Like sometimes you just, like you said, you just need the groovy songs. But there are definitely times like I've found myself for sure looking for things that say all the right things or say, or basically reading my mind. Like that's, but you can, if you go on a playlist that seems like that might be the thing, it's like you'll find that maybe half the time, but the other half it just has that same sonic vibe. It doesn't have necessarily the same story to it. So that could be an interesting way to classify things for sure. Um, because that, you can package a set of lyrics 100 different ways depending on who's bringing the like song part to life. And so yeah, like I could write like you and I could take the same set of lyrics and make it look completely differently. So our music would be falling on different playlists, even though we're talking about the same thing, you know?
Yeah,
So like being
exactly.
able to like have those sorts of classifications could be you could be onto something here. I would, you know, the we'll have to note that and just like, if Spotify takes that idea, they heard it here first.
Yeah, yeah, we're copywriting it right here, right now.
Exactly. Is there a song that you've written that you think best embodies who you are as an artist in terms of like your one song sample of like, if you like this, listen to the rest. If you like this, you should be a fan, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would say at least out of the songs that I have out right now, I am in love with my song Fade.
You're probably the problem. My head is spinning so fast, laying here in my bed, wondering how I can do more. I don't think I'm doing enough. I try to be there for my friends without my fear creeping in that they'll find someone better. I think about it till my head hurts. 'Cause I've been the one that's been replaced, and I don't wanna be her again. The slow fade hurts the most when you're the one that's left behind. And that's how I got my fear. I'll be the only one here. When the day is done, I'll be the one to fade all over again.
Just because it's about like a really personal experience that I went through, and it was one of those things where like releasing it and just writing it was such a good, just like it allowed me to express my emotions and kind of just work through what I felt when I didn't know how I felt. And so really like deep diving into like how can I how can I voice this experience to other people so they relate to it, but while I'm also doing a service to myself by getting these feelings out on paper so I just don't have to think about them as much. Because of course, like, when something happens and you're like, oh my gosh, like this happened and I have so many feelings about it and I just don't know what to say or I don't know what to do. Like really being able to like hone in on, okay, this is how I feel. This is what I'm going to say about it. And just simplifying the feelings. 'Cause I feel like as humans, we not exaggerate, but we're very dramatic. We're like, oh my gosh, like this happened and I don't know how to feel about this. And we get overwhelmed so easily because we don't know how to verbalize how we're feeling. And as a songwriter, it's my job to verbalize how I'm feeling and have other people relate to it. And so, like in my song, I talk about like kind of moving on from situations that no longer service me in the way that I think is beneficial and growing from that saying, okay, like I've grown from this situation and I know that like in the future, if I'm ever in something similar, that I won't react the same way. I have the tools to grow from it, to move on from it. And like even after releasing the song, like I've still found it applicable in my everyday life. Like even when it comes to like something simple like, oh, well, I guess I'm not in school anymore, so I can't use like a test as an example. But like if I was still in school and I had a test and I didn't do very well, I'd be like, okay, like I didn't do very well, but like how will this affect me a year from now? It won't.
True.
Because of course like now I'm graduated, so I'm not thinking about the test that I took in my history class 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But just being able to draw not only inspiration but just being able to find growth from songs that I wrote, and I really hope that others can find that as well, just being able to be like, okay, if you listen to this and you can relate to it, like I hope it like something in it sticks out to you or some of the lyrics stick out to you enough to where you'll listen to it and you'll like really think about like, okay, this is what I'm going through. Like, is it really worth me putting all my time and energy into it when like tomorrow's a new day?
True. I like what you said at the beginning where it was like it kind of like it's killing two birds with one stone and writing songs like that where it's like it's getting something off of my chest and just basically like letting me just word vomit for a minute
Yeah.
and getting rid of like because it's like it's one of those things where it's like it's just like when you are talking to somebody about something and it's like all you have to do is just get it off your chest and then you it's just like this weight is like lifted off of you. That's exactly what it is because you're writing and you're just putting words onto the page or into your phone or however you choose and getting it out there and crafting it into this piece of work. But it's like at the same time of like creating something that other people can relate to, you're creating something that's like alleviating all of this like weight off of you that was carried with whatever topic at hand was, or whatever this, whatever happened that led to said song. It's like, you're kind of doing yourself a favor while potentially doing anybody listening a favor and like in telling that story, because odds are if you've gone through it, thousands and thousands of other people have been through the same thing, if not maybe every single one of us. There are some life experiences that are just universal and they just come in different packages. But I 100%, that's like the best part is it's like, okay, it's it's done. I'm done with it now. It's other people's stuff now, and they can do with it what
Yes.
they will. But and 100% things that happen, like, really, like, is it going to affect me a year from now? That's just a good life nugget, like
Yeah.
that's just
Yes,
like, is
exactly.
this really going to matter to me a week from now? Maybe. Is it going to matter a month from now? Probably very little. A year from now, probably going to forget it ever existed or ever happened. Some things are just, everything seems like the end of the world in the moment. And then you let a little bit more time pass and it's like, okay, things are fine. Things are fine. The world did not implode because I didn't do well on an exam for per our example. It's not the end of the world. It'll be okay. Time
Yeah.
time will carry on. Things will continue to happen, and it's just the motion continues.
Yes, exactly.
If you're someone that is constantly looking for new music and trying to find artists before they blow up, then I'd like to introduce you to a project you're going to love. Indie for Your Inbox is an email newsletter that brings you a new song from an independent artist every single day. Uniting music lovers with the future face of the industry, we want to provide indie artists a new way to bring their music to their future fans. Click the link to subscribe now and find your future favorite artist. If you had to pick 2 or 3 artists that you think your music is like a combination of, who would be on the list?
I would say a mix of Olivia Rodrigo, Julia Michaels, and ooh, third one's a hard one. I would say at the moment, maybe like Sabrina Carpenter or maybe a little bit of Billie Eilish, but not as much of Billie Eilish. Just because Julia Michaels is a big songwriter, so I draw a lot of inspiration just writing lines from her songs and kind of like structurally, and all that, just because I feel like she has a lot of different approaches to songs. And she's written for multiple artists, so of course she has to kind of take that into account and be like, okay, I'm writing for a person that's not myself. Like, how am I supposed to approach this differently than I would for my song? And then I would say Olivia Rodrigo, just because I feel like although she's like a year younger than I am, but she has a lot of new approaches to music, which I think is very refreshing. And so being able to listen to her music and draw inspiration from like, oh, I really liked that layered vocal, or oh, I liked how she kind of drew inspiration from like 90s music, and just being able to learn from people who are currently very successful and applying it to my music and making it my own, because I feel like as an artist, it's very easy to copy other people or just kind of make similar music because we're trying to appeal to the masses because, oh, like we're listening to one song and that song is super popular. Let me make a song that sounds very similar. Like, I feel like in some way you're not staying true to yourself as an artist. And so at least something that I try to keep in mind is like, okay, say like Olivia Rodrigo is very successful. She has all this great music, but I'm not Olivia Rodrigo. So like at the end of the day, what can I do that can make myself stick out from other artists, whether it be my sound, whether it be my writing, and just making it my own and kind of not overthinking the fact of like, okay, I may not be like other artists, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's as you were kind of going through that, I was like, I'm so like I love that this is being brought up. But it's kind of this idea of like deviating and not replicating, where it's like you're taking something from what you're consuming and what you're seeing, and there is value to what they are doing because they are at this level of like stardom, whatever you want to call it. Like they're successful in what they're doing. So there's something to be said about what specifically they're doing, but not everything that they specifically are doing is going to work for everyone else. There might be something that, for Olivia Rodrigo, for example, there might be something of like her artistry and her songwriting or her production or whatever it is that you could take from and run with and do really well with. But that probably wouldn't be the same piece that I would be able to pull from there and actually make use of. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
there's something to be taken with a grain of salt from all of these different things, and you can be your own version of whatever that is to whatever extent. But you get in trouble when you get the ones that are like you try and replicate who that artist is, because not to be cliche and sound stupid or anything, but like they already are a thing. We already have one of them. We don't need another one of them. We need whatever it
Yeah.
is that you're doing and what you're bringing to the table. Can that be a flavor of that? Absolutely. But then it's going to also have like 10 other flavors from 10 other different artists. And it's going to be just this combination. That's why there's so much overlap in genres and so many artists that you could kind of put in the same category, but they have like slightly different inspirations, and all these other different things, because it's like they're products of who they're consuming. They're products of what we're seeing now, but they're not second comings of them exactly. You know what I mean? Like, it's not this, you're not trying to be Olivia Rodrigo 2.0. You're trying to be your own version, just pulling something from an inspirational point from someone like her, or like the Julia Michaels thing.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it's so valuable to be able to, like, be able to listen to artists and pull stuff from their music, because I feel like that's why people release music, like, they want people to listen to them, to learn from their experiences, and I feel like it's I mean, I like, if somebody were to take something that I were doing, like, in my music and apply it to their music, like, I would be so flattered. Be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh my gosh, like, you liked that? Like, I'm so glad you liked it and you applied it to your music."
Yeah.
And so, like, being able to just kind of like, even, like, generation after generation, just, like, continuously learning from, like, the people who've come before us, and because 'cause they've learned what's worked for them, and they've learned what hasn't worked, and so kind of, like, learning, okay, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and then looking at myself going, "Okay, let me try this even though it didn't work for them, because it might still work for me, and this would set me apart from them, but also lead to my success."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's a reason that they got to where they are and that they're doing what they're doing in the way that they are doing it. But yeah, like that's all there is really to it, is like take something from that, but don't make it the whole,
Yeah.
like take it like an ingredient, not the whole recipe.
Yes,
Is
exactly.
is I think the best way to kind of put it. But you're 100% right. It's like, there's a reason that they're doing what they're doing, and who knows who might take something from what you're doing now. Like it's crazy to think about all that stuff. But it's, yeah, that's the beauty of it all. What is an outside passion of yours that you think impacts who you are as an artist?
An outside passion, I work out a lot, and I feel like it helps my artistry by really clearing my head. Um, you'll probably find me at the gym almost every day. Just whether like I love just doing movement, like whether it's like, oh, I need to go outside and take a walk, or I need to go run on the treadmill for 30 minutes. Like I really find value in moving every day. Just because there have been points in my life where like I haven't been physically active, and I kind of hit a wall where I had so much brain fog and I just had so much going on in my head that it was very hard to compartmentalize everything. And then once I started like being active again and lifting weights and just like being intentional on, I guess, caring for myself, that like it really like my music really took a turn for the better because I was just doing things to benefit me, and it's I mean, like, it cleared my head. It helped me, like, write better songs because I knew how to kind of pinpoint, like, this is how I was feeling in this instant. Let's write about this one feeling, rather than, like, I'm feeling everything at once and I don't know what to write about and I'm getting stressed out and just going in circles. And so, yeah, I definitely owe a lot of kind of, like, I guess, where I'm at right now just due to, like, moving and being active just because I feel like that's so important, especially, like, if you're not taking care of, like, yourself and your mental health, then you can't give all of yourself to your craft.
Yeah, I think that's a great, it really, like, it's one of those things where it's like people say it makes a difference, and then it's like you don't really, it's like, okay, whatever, like, sure. But then it's like you do
Yeah.
it and it's like, oh, like, maybe they're talking about something for a reason here. But yeah,
Yes.
no, it there's something about being able to just, because if you think about it, like, physical activity, can you really do anything else while you're doing those things? So you just kind of have
No.
to, like, the head just kind of has to clear. You can listen to whatever
Yes.
you want to listen to or watch something if you so please, but it's like you're not going to be able to multitask while you're doing that. So it just kind of puts you in this space where it's just like nothing else is going on, for the better,
Yes.
but nothing else is going
Yeah.
on. Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like if you're investing in yourself in that way, it will make a difference. And enable you to do all the other things even better, you know? Um, are you necessarily going to find songwriting inspiration from, doing bicep curls at the gym? Probably not. But it's the headspace. It's the
Yes.
headspace.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't think I've ever met a songwriter who wasn't an overthinker. And so I feel like that's also just why people are songwriters, because they have so much going on in their head, and being able to kind of just like take a breath and let our brains decompress for like 30 minutes to an hour like is so beneficial and just nice to just catch a break for a second essentially.
I've never met a songwriter who wasn't an overthinker. I've never heard that, but that is so true.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. You have to be. You have to be. You just
Yeah.
that's yeah. Okay. So a thing that I have been doing is take a question from last week's artist for this week's artist. So last week's artist's question was, in the last month, what moment had the most magic when it comes to music? Like the most like, I don't know, necessarily like eye-opening, or just like a like, whoa, like that was cool kind of moment. Recently for you with music.
Yeah. So, I'm currently, as I mentioned earlier, like working on writing songs for my EP. And I constantly write with my friend Emily. We've probably written together almost every week since the beginning of the year. And so I brought her idea, and it's a song titled "The Problem." And so basically, I brought her the idea, and I was like, "Hey, I really want to write a song with this idea." And we originally started going down a completely different path. And I originally wanted it to be more of like a sassy song, but it ended up being slower. And we wrote on it for two co-writes, and then we took a week break because she's currently working on projects of her own as well. And during that week break, I like sat down with it because I was definitely overthinking it. And it like I'll write some songs where it'll be like, this is like it's a song. It's not a great song, but like at least I wrote it, I have the feelings out there. And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't want to release this. I don't want
Mhm.
people to hear this. It's more so like I'm gonna keep it for myself, and I'm gonna learn from this song. And so during that week on break, when Emily and I didn't write, I wrote kind of like a more sassy spin-off of what we were writing, and I brought it to Emily the following week, and I read it to her, and she was like, "This is good. This is really good." And we didn't write the whole song in one session. It probably took us 2 more sessions to write it, but, like, the whole time just being able to, like, vent how I was feeling about the situation that we were writing about, because it's a song called "The Problem," like, it's gotta be sassy, it has to have a lot of, like, tongue in cheek in it, and, like, being able to, like, connect with Emily on that level, and being able to openly tell her all of my experiences that I wanted to, like, put into the song, and, she would even call me out when I'd be like, "Okay, I wanna say this, this, and this," and she's like, "That's too much. Like, we need to narrow it down, and, like, what are we actually trying to say?" And it like, once we finished it, like, we were looking through it, and we're like, "Oh, this is gonna be good." Like, I'm so excited to record it, because it'll be on my new EP for sure, but it's very sassy, and I feel like fits kind of what I'm going for, because at least for this EP, I really wanted to write about, like, my college experience, and kind of, like, just finding myself, and like, diving in deeper to, like, who I am as an artist, and just really being able to, like, feel out what my vibe is, and, like, what I'm really going for. Especially, like, I've recorded 3 songs so far, and after each song, one of my goals is to learn learn from something that I did during the last session and improve upon it. And so just through that, I just because I wanna be able to grow my craft, to like learn from my mistakes or learn from what worked and how can I make it work even better, kind of thing. But just having that like songwriting experience like with Emily, like finishing that song, being like, oh my gosh, this is gonna like whether or not it's a hit, this song is gonna be oh, it's gonna be, I guess, a banger. It's gonna be a banger. And I can't wait to kind of see how it comes together in the studio and then release it and see like what everybody else thinks about it as well.
I think that that's like a great sort of example of one of those things where it's like you want it to work out the first time. You have the idea, you have the vision, whatever. Like you said, like you came with the idea with the problem, but it just wasn't turning into what it needed to right away. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's very quick, which is very nice because then it's, less resistance, less, less you have to actually work for it. But
Yeah.
sometimes the ones that like are a little bit of a stick in the mud for a while and then you finally get there, it's like this was very worth it. Like it's like you wait on it and you let the idea do its thing, and then it's like it was worth the wait. It was worth putting more time into it, and it's like those are more rewarding than the ones that just kind of happen off the bat sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. 4 writing sessions later, and we were like, "Thank goodness this is done, but we are so glad that we finally got here."
What is your question for next week's artist?
Oh, let's see. What is an idea for a song that they are currently sitting on that they want to write to? I guess, and why? So I
Yeah,
always love to
always
hear,
the
like,
and why.
yeah, I always love to hear kinda, like, the stories behind the ideas and everything.
Okay, perfect. Um, what is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists?
What sets me apart? I feel like I not that other artists don't do this, but I'm very intentional in what stories I tell in my music. And of course, like that's the whole basis of songwriting. Like everybody is telling a story, but I've been told by a lot of people that I write with where they're like you thoroughly think about these situations before you write them down. And I take pride in being very intentional, and even if it doesn't even if the song doesn't come to me right away, like making sure that I put all the right feelings into a song and find the right words. Because of course, like I can write a song in 5 minutes. Like, yes, that's great. But like being able to go back to it and edit it and revise it and be like, how can I make this better? I feel like is a skill that it takes a while to learn how to master, like writing a song and going back and being able to be like what works in this song, what doesn't work. And I I feel like it like of course it's I'm still not perfect at it, but being able to like edit my songs and be like, okay, this will tell this story. And just being very specific about it, whether it be like about a guy or about friends or about a relationship, being able to be very specific about like this is what this song offers you, essentially.
Hmm.
I wish
I'm
I had like a better answer for that because I'm like, okay, what do I offer? Because I'm like, but I would say like short answer, like very, very thoughtful lyrics.
I'm curious because I read on I think it's on songwriting by Aaron Espy recently, and there was something in there that he was talking about, you know, a good songwriter will like write a good line and keep it in there just because it's a good line, but a great songwriter will cut that out even though it's like, even though it's like they love that line just because it doesn't add anything to the song. Are there any like lines that you've written that you've then like cut that you were like, as much as this pains me, it just doesn't tell the whole story enough and so it just has to go?
Ye Absolutely. I've been there a few times where, like especially if like you're telling a story that's very like near and dear to your heart, every line is going to be like, I went through that, so that's a great line. But of course, like at the end of the day, you're playing the song for an audience. And if it's a very specific line where you're like, yeah, only I've really gone through that, people are going to listen to it and be like, okay, that's great and all, but I can't really connect with it. And so being able to write those good lines that not only connect with you, but connect with others, and being able to, I guess, find that happy medium of like, okay, yes, I went through this, but how can I not put it in simpler terms, but how can I put it in more relatable terms rather than like, oh, I was in a red truck with this license plate, with this color seats, with this man, but being more like, oh, I was in a red truck with this brown haired dude, and oh my gosh, I was falling for him. Like that's more relatable rather than being like, oh, his license plate was this. If you ever see him, like he's mine, back off kind of like of course that could be fun too. But like I guess well to I do yourself, I guess like you do you kind of thing for songwriting, but
Hmm.
also like figuring out what what are the people who listen to my music, what are they looking for?
Hmm. Yeah, and sometimes like it's something that's really interesting. It's come up several times where it's like sometimes the more specific you get, the more it can paint the picture and the more then it can connect with people. Because like there are songs that have done notoriously well that aren't ever touching on specifically what it's about, but they're just painting
Yes.
like everything around it. And so it's like it's not even a detail thing. It's just like you have to pick the right moments. You have to pick the right
Yes.
way of saying the license plate or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like you have to paint the picture in the right way, which is like ultimately what you're saying is it's like choose the right way to say whatever it is you're trying to say. Is the license plate really adding anything to the story? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Maybe. And if it is, go for it. If not, trash it.
Exactly, and of course, like, there are good songs that are super broad, and there are good songs that are super specific, but, like, knowing which topics to be broad or
Mm.
specific about is really important because I know, like, I've wrote a song before where it's like, I am pulled in a million different directions for this song, I don't know what it really is about,
Hmm.
and just kind of picking it apart and realizing, okay, this one song could be 5 different songs with how much I've packed into it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think some genres lend themselves more to more details than others. Like you're not gonna find something in my mind that's like R&B that's like super super detail like driven and like very very like that's you could and it could work, but to me like that my now like that less aligns than something that's like very
Yeah.
folk because like that's you expect somebody with an acoustic guitar in hand to be telling you every little detail. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, exactly. Like Noah Khan, I'm like, "Oh my
Yes,
gosh."
that's kind of the example I was thinking of. Like one of his songs, it's like he just like that's what he does. He just paints the picture. He never tells
Yes.
you exactly what is happening. It's just like the whole everything around it. It's like he's dancing around the like punchline essentially.
Yeah, oh my just listening to his stuff, I'm like,
How do you even
it's
come up with those words, you
I
know?
know, I know, but it's like I think it's so special, especially when you can, like, listen to a song and be like, "Oh, I know who that is. I know who's singing this right now." But I feel like
Hmm.
he's definitely one of those artists where, like, if somebody were to play one of his songs for me and didn't tell me who was singing it, I would probably know within the first 30 seconds, like, who was singing the song just because of how detailed it was and just, I guess, the sound of it as well.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. There are some that it's just like they really know like their sound, what they're doing, and they're like doing it very well. And
Yes.
it's cool. What impact do you want to have with your music and with your artistry?
Oh, I would say what impact just being able to touch listeners on a personal level, and having them relate to songs and just kind of like being there for them without physically being there for them. I guess, like, I want my songs to be like a metaphorical hand they can hold whenever they're going through a situation, and just 'cause, like, I feel like that's what every artist is trying to accomplish, being able to write a song and having people relate to it, but for me, I wanna have more of an emotional impact of like, "Okay, I've gone through this really hard situation, I got through it, like, you can too, like, here's my hand in the form of my song."
Hmm.
And I hope it helps. And then, of course, there are, like, platforms that they can reach out to me through, like, TikTok or Instagram or any of that and, like, voice their stories, but I feel like it all starts with the song because, of course, like, without the song, nobody would be reaching out to me. So being able to, like, right off the bat be like, "Hey, like, I'm here for you, I've gone through this." And, like, I post covers or not covers, but I post some, like, unreleased songs on TikTok, and, like, there was this one lady who commented, she was like, "This moved me to tears, like, I've never had a song do that before, like, this is so beautiful." And, of course, I'm like, "I think you're perceiving this song completely differently than I did, but I'm so happy it's helping you and that I'm here for you," and all that, like, it was just so nice to kind of hear that my song was like, had that much of an impact on somebody.
Yeah, it's crazy how that can happen sometimes where it's just like, especially like in the moments like that where it's like this was not necessarily perceived how I intended it or how I wrote it, like or something like that. It's like, especially then it's like, whoa, like the impact of kind of what's going on here is like, it's not just, oh, somebody's been through that same story, like they're relating to that exact experience, but because they're taking it in a completely different way and then connecting with it in that way. And it's just like, that's crazy. That's like to me, like the most like probably impactful and rewarding thing to be on the receiving end of. It's being like, I created this thing and then people are like, having that sort of connection with it. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Come on, that's
Y
crazy.
yes, exactly, like, I live for, like, people who comment on my TikToks and everything because I love to hear from everybody, and I eat it up because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I'm so happy you liked this, like, I wrote it because of this, and I'm so happy you can relate to it," kinda thing. It's just, like, one of those moments where, like, "Oh my gosh, you love my work," like, it's so rewarding, and it's just, like, it's just it makes me really happy to see that, like, others are connecting with me on a level that I'm connecting with them.
Yeah, it's really, yeah. It's to have something that you just put out into the world and have it be received the way, like, that's what we do. That's what we're doing it for. And so like to have it be received and essentially have that goal accomplished is so cool. I think that brings us to the final question, which is ultimately, why music?
I am a very emotional person. I would like to say, like, I feel my emotions very, very big or I just like, I'm, like, trying to figure out a better way to say that. Um, I'm very in touch with my emotions and my feelings, and being able to have an outlet to, like, kind of use those feelings, use those emotions in a productive and creative way is something that really stands out to me because if it's music is a very big outlet for me, and especially, like, using it as a career path is very helpful because, of course, like, every day you're gonna have big feelings, you're gonna have big emotions, and if you don't have a way to express them, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And so getting into music has really helped me be able to vocalize how I'm feeling and really pinpoint like what's going on in my head. Like even in my everyday life, like if I get into an argument with one of my friends or my boyfriend or just like something happens where I'm a bit upset or I'm not feeling very happy, it's really helped me figure out like, okay, what's really going on? Like, I know I'm not upset at, like, what just happened, but did something happen throughout the day? Like, am I stressed out about something? And I feel like if I wasn't in music and I wasn't able to really sit with my feelings and pinpoint how I was feeling and pinpoint, like, what exactly I was feeling, then, like, in my daily life, like, I wouldn't able to vocalize how I was feeling so accurately. And so I think that's mainly why I chose to go with music because it's it's so rewarding yet like so fulfilling as well, both when you do music and just in daily life, like being able to connect with people as well and communicate like figure out a way to successfully communicate with them.
Yeah, I mean, em- emotion brings it back to the whole personal connection thing and, the stories and all that. It's like you have like getting that out is huge. And getting that out in a way that it then can get it out for someone else is even huger, if that's a word. We're gonna roll with it. But like being able to have that sort of outlet in whatever form it comes in, obviously in this case it being music, but like that's a huge thing. And finding that is like always very empowering and always really cool to see and to be able to do. And especially, like I said, when it comes to being able to do that and then have it also potentially be something for someone else is massive. That is crazy, but that is like really cool at the same time because it's like you're killing however many birds with the one stone. It's
Yeah,
back to
yes,
that whole thing. It's
exactly.
like, yes, we're knocking out the one bird for sure, but how many other birds are we knocking out? Um, might have run with that metaphor a little too heavily, but I'm sticking with it. So, yes, that exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, of course, you have many emotions, so however many rocks you have, however going with your what you said, however many birds you can knock out with those stones, and you gotta roll with it.
I'm not gonna. That metaphor did not do me as well, but it's we'll go with it. We'll roll with it. Knocking out all the birds. But yeah, no, that's the really cool and rewarding part of all of it. Especially because it's like it coming from a natural, like personal place. Like that's always the cool thing, is it's like something that just would have just manifested itself naturally and just started kind of doing its thing and being that outlet has now made larger waves, and had a larger impact than just from the source. So
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, in that case, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.